The question, how does life go on, is poignant, but particularly so for those who have experienced traumatic loss through the Holocaust and subsequent genocides. My mother was a child refugee who at 7 travelled alone across Europe on the Kindertransport, eventually rebuilding a happy life in Millisle with my father. Coincidentally, their cottage overlooks a place with an extraordinary history for Northern Ireland. It was a place where the Jewish community leased a farm for over 300 refugees, children who escaped Nazi Germany. Walter Kammerling was one of those children, and this is part of his story and the lives and the loves of other children who came to Millisle. So Walter, thank you so very much for having this conversation with me. I'd like you to start the conversation by telling me a little bit about what Vienna was like when you left, where you were living, and what you saw when you got up each morning.
That is a very interesting question, because Vienna at the time had 21 districts. We lived in the second district, and the second district historically had a large number of Jews, because in the Middle Ages there was the ghetto there, etc. The Austrian government, though they were not truly democratic, they were not democratic, they were Austrians. They did not want to be Germans. 1934 was a year after Hitler came to power in Germany, and the whole continent was still gripped by the economic problems which were caused by the Wall Street crash. Don't forget, we have to think then about the November pogrom, which the Nazis euphemistically called Kristallnacht, which is, I must admit, is a name I don't really like to use for that, because Kristallnacht can give it a somewhat romantic connotation, and it was not a romantic connotation. It was a very nasty pogrom. The shops were looted or destroyed, and Jewish men were arrested and sent to the concentration camp for no other reason, because they were Jewish.
Can I ask you how you came to Kindertransport?
In Parliament, passed a decree so that allow Jewish children to come unaccompanied, it's unaccompanied by their family, to Britain, provided that for each child a sum of £50 had to be paid, so that they don't become a burden to the country. And that was collected by church groups, the Quakers, Jewish organizations, and it was quite a job to collect that. We say glibly £50. £50 in 1938 was a great deal of money. When I came onto the Kindertransport, I was 15, and when I said goodbye to my father, it was the first time I saw my father cry. That choked me a bit,
Of course.
and somehow I realized that my father thought he will never see me again, and he was right. And I didn't really want to leave his bedside. I remember I stood at the foot of his bed, and it was an older cousin of mine. She was with me, and she sort of took me under the arm and she said, "Walter, it's late, we must go." And took me to the threshold, and I still stood at the threshold. And in the late afternoon, my mother and my 2 sisters came to the station, and I just with them, but I was almost in a daze. I didn't really, it's not that I looked forward to going. I was reluctant in a way. I was crossed with the whole situation.
Can you remember anything of your arrival?
When we got to Holland, the ladies there gave us coffee and tea and chocolate as well, and we didn't have a lot of chocolate at home, as you can imagine, and it was wonderful. But the important thing is they smiled at us.
They smiled?
Yeah, and it's a long time since we see strangers smile at us.
And how did you come to Northern Ireland, and at what age were you? How long did you stay in Britain?
Well, when I left, I was just 15. I was 15 in November, and in December I was, as I said, I was on the first transport from Vienna, which left Vienna on the 10th of December, arrived here on the 12th. And a lady came from Northern Ireland and took 3 of us. The Belfast Jewish community agreed to looked after the kids. And in Clifton Park Avenue, I remember 62 Clifton Park Avenue, there was a hostel, and we were there. And it was a very interesting thing, because youngsters from all sort of background came. There were some Germans, mostly Germans, a lot of Austrians were there as well. They managed to get a farm in County Down, and there were a few groups there. There were the youngsters, that's us. And then there were the Chalutzim, that was a Zionist organization which used that. They were only a few years older than we were, but of course it's the difference between 15 and 18. With 18 you're a grown up, with 15 you're not.
What do you remember of the farm?
On the farm it was, the atmosphere was very nice, in a way. We did sort of joke together, but it was, everybody had their own little packet to carry, and they never mentioned that. We didn't know how long we were going to stay there. I think we were in tents, in large tents in the beginning.
I would like to be able to close my eyes and for you to take me a walk up into the farm. Can you describe to me what I'm going to see?
Yes. When you walk up, there's a long path before you get to the farm. It's slightly uphill. And on the left are some buildings where right in the front there was the carpenter, Mo Silberstein. Then, as far as I know, there were the stable, the horses, and along then was the byre, the cows were kept there.
So you've woken up, and I want all the smells and the scents and the hearing and the what's going on. Just wake up in the morning in Ballyrowley House. What do you see?
Well, we got from that later on from the dormitory. Then we had our breakfast, and after breakfast we went out there, where the old man, Patrias, told us what we have to do during the day. Unless, of course, you had a certain job, the ones that went into the byre, the ones into the stable, the ones that worked in dairy, they had some dairy girls, because when they milked the cows, then some of the milk went into a centrifuge where you have get the fat out, and they make butter, and they made butter there, and the eggs, etc. What I did like was the harvesting. And when it was harvesting time, we had a combine harvester, which does everything. So that was there, and we went out fairly early in the morning, and finished when it got dark.
If I was to say to you, describe it to me, would you describe it as a happy time, or as a positive time, or a frightening time?
It was partly a happy time, partly a positive time, and partly a very sad time, because of course nobody talked about their background. Nobody talked what is very close to them, the parents that left behind. And the ones that were left behind, most of them didn't see anymore. But it was never spoken about it.
Tell me about people who were left behind in Vienna. Who did you lose?
Well, my father, as I said, my father was right. My sister, Erika, of course, was 18, so she could get a permit. Ruti, however, was 17. She was just 1 year too old for the Kindertransport, and 1 year too young to get a permit, so she was left behind. I didn't know what happened to them. When we came back to Vienna, they weren't there. I made my first trip with my wife, which went to where we used to live, and It was only 8 years before that I left, and the doors were still open, and because now they're all closed and you've got things that ring bell. And I walked in and nothing had changed. And I walked first up to the first floor where we lived. I didn't get up. I only got halfway up the stairs, and it was extremely painful. And I realized, what am I doing? I'm coming to a door I've known all my life, because I lived all my life in that place, and I know the door. It doesn't mean much. The family behind isn't there. I don't know where they are. I just turned back. And the part I miss most, that I never really talked to my parents about serious things. I never told them about my affection for them, and I love them. I realized that a boy of that age wouldn't say that to his parents. But when I could say it, they weren't there anymore. I hope they knew it.
How does life go on?
Life can go on by learning about the life and getting people involved in having to take a stand and talk about what happened there. It's not just telling them and they walk away and that's it. No, they have to do something about it. They have to look what happened, the history of it. What happened then, what happened now. But it's a personal involvement. You have to put something in, study it, do it, make a play about it, write about it. The more you work it, the more it stays with you. The more you'll be aware what is there, the more you'll go the right way.
Walter, can I thank you so very much for letting us take a little bit away from it, because it's very kind and very generous and so helpful to us to have your experiences. Thank you for giving so very much to us.
Thank you.